Hi everybody, and welcome to another edition of Phil's World on Life and Leadership. This would be, Lawrence, episode 3, but I'm calling it episode 2.5 because the last episode was actually only 9 minutes long. And so I don't think it qualifies as a legitimate podcast. It's only half a podcast. And so this episode is a full podcast. So we're going, this is 2.5. Episode 2.5, Lawrence. And this is a full one. We're going to have the starter. We're going to have the main course. We may even have dessert, sugar-free, but it's going to be good. It's going to be brilliant, and we're going to get right into it. We asked people to ask us questions, and we got some questions. We got a whole lot of questions, in fact. So we, in fact, don't have time to answer all the questions, but we've pulled out some that we think are going to be really helpful for the majority of people. So, Lawrence, first question.
So Nolo asks this question. How do you manage the tension between high-capacity, low-character leaders and high-character, low-capacity leaders?
Okay, good question. How do you handle the tension between those who are high capacity on one hand, but they're low character? And on the other hand, you have those leaders who are high character, but their capacity doesn't seem to have what it takes to get the job done. Here's what I believe. I believe so much of what you are doing if you are building a leadership team is determined by how you model leadership. So what does that mean? That means you need to build a team that has the work ethic that you have. So if you're cutting corners, don't expect your team not to cut corners. If you're concerned about whether your team has good character, I would say to you, firstly, ask yourself, am I dealing with character issues? Okay, because there's no point us getting concerned about the character of someone else if we're not dealing with our own issues with regard to character, trust, integrity, all of that. Now, that doesn't mean any of us are perfect, but we've got to start with ourselves. Now, where do we go from there? Well, it is a tension and it is a challenge. If I had the choice over who would I have as a leader, here's the thing I would ask. I don't want just high capacity, because I suppose we all want high capacity people around us on our teams to work with. I'm not looking necessarily for high capacity. I'm looking for high teachability. Okay, so I'm changing the word completely. We're getting rid of capacity and we're looking at teachability, because what I've realized is that if someone is teachable, they can grow in capacity. If they are not teachable, then they're not going to be able to grow in capacity. So what am I looking for? I believe a teachable person is usually a person of good character. I want someone on our team. We want to have a team of high character individuals. In fact, if I had high capacity and low character, they're not going to last. It doesn't matter how good someone is, if they do not have the character to match their ability, they're not going to hang around. They're not going to stay in an organization. They're not going to last in our organization, because character is going to get tested. Character is going to keep you when your capacity may not be there. You know, character keeps you somewhere, gives you the strength, the ability to keep going. And if I look at, for example, let's consider athletes. If you look at some of the best athletes in the world today, they all listen to a coach who maybe never achieved what they achieved. In fact, there are brilliant athletes out there who are not playing at the highest level. They're not achieving what they could have. Maybe they're better than some of the best tennis players, golfers, team sport players, rugby, soccer, football, whatever sport you're into. There are brilliant people out there who are not on the team, and they had the capacity. But the challenge is that they couldn't handle listening to the coach. Their character didn't add up. So I'm always looking for people of character, people we can trust, but more than that, adding to that, I wouldn't say more than that, I'd say adding to that, we want teachability. When you talk to someone, when you interview them, when you're looking at who's coming on your team, do you look at that person and go, man, they want to learn, they want to grow. I can see that they're hungry. Or do they come with the kind of like, well, I know this and I've done that and I've achieved. And they kind of already feel like they know it all. They're not the people you want on your team. You want teachable people, and you want people who you can trust and of good character. And that starts by looking at yourself. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Thank you for that, Nolo.
So the next question is from Leanne.
Okay, hi Leanne.
Leanne is asking, leadership and life both have seasons. When seasons change in leadership from a mountaintop to a valley, what tools are there to help one transition and stay the path during this testing period?
Okay, great question. What happens when there are different seasons in life and leadership? How do we stay the path? Well, I'd encourage you to read Bobby Houston's book, Stay the Path. That'll help. Brilliant book on dealing with all different seasons of life. And, that's a free plug there for Pastor Bobby Houston, who with her husband Brian are my senior pastors, and they're awesome. But you know what? I mean, there is wisdom from a whole lot of other people that you can get on this. But here's what I would say. You can never base your value or self-worth on your season. Okay, did you catch that? Don't ever base your value or your self-worth on your season. You've got to understand this, whether it's the most successful moment or it's the toughest moment. You are not as bad as your worst moment, but on the flip side, you are not as great as people tell you in your most successful moment. You need to recognize I cannot build who I am upon the highs and lows of life. If I do, I become an emotional roller coaster. I just am up and down all the time. I have to learn to develop an inner core that gives me the ability to stay calm, to stay composed, to handle the different seasons of life. So, Leanne asked, what tools? Well, here's one of the tools. The first tool, I think, is good questions. When you're in a tough season, what can I learn from this? Okay, whatever season of life, in fact, I'm in. Maybe I'm succeeding right now. What do I learn from this? I think that's one of the first tools. And often we don't ask questions when we're in good seasons, or we only ask them in bad seasons. And usually we ask, what's wrong with me? God, why is this happening to me? We ask bad questions. They're not good questions. Good questions are asking, hey, what can I learn from this? The tough season I'm in or the great season? Secondly, what I've learned is that most times in different seasons of life, friendships and good relationships will get you through. So you need to really build into your life friendships and relationships that you trust, people who are with you through the good times and the tough times. And you don't always have a lot of those, Lawrence. You don't always have a whole lot of people. We have, a big church, and there's a lot of people coming to our church, but within that context of our church, different groups have different groups of friendships. And that's where you, I believe, get that ability to sustain whatever season you're going through in life. So who are your friends? Who are the people who you're connecting and associating with? What are those relationships? Because if you're in a time of success, you know what? The right friends will say, don't get a big head. Don't think you're better than you are. The right friends will actually pull you down to size a little bit, and we all need that. The right friends will also, in a tough season, say, come on, you're better than this. Keep going. I believe in you. Those friendships are forged over time, but I encourage you to look for those, go after them. And then thirdly, how to ask yourself, how do I keep my spirit, my inner person healthy in every season? You can get busy, you can get full. Life has seasons where it's full, where you're raising a family and you're doing your job and you've got a whole lot of different responsibilities. In the middle of that, you have to find a way to quiet your spirit, quiet your soul. Whether that means you have to get up a little bit earlier, whether that means you have to discipline yourself to do some form of exercise, whatever it looks like, you have to deal with the inner you. No one will do that for you. But if you get that right, I believe you'll have the capacity and ability to handle every different season. I absolutely believe that God gives us wisdom in every season, but we need to quieten our spirit to hear from Him, to listen to Him, to invite Him into our world. And I think sometimes, we don't do that because we think somehow I've got to control it all. And, Philippians 4, 6 and 7 talks about the whole deal of presenting your request before God. So His peace guards your heart and mind. And prayer is simply inviting God into your world. That's what it is. People are like, what's prayer? Well, prayer is saying, God, I can't do this on my own. I need you. And when you invite God into your world, then you realize, I don't just have to handle this on my own. And it gives you the ability to deal with whatever season you're in. So there we go. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go with a bonus question.
Bonus question.
And the bonus question, which was not prepared in the notes, I'm just looking at it here. It is from Roseanne. And Roseanne is asking the question, I hope I was saying your name correctly, Roseanne. If you could restart your leadership journey, what incorrect practices or perspectives would you let go of sooner? Okay, big question. What would I do if I was doing my journey over? Here's one of the things I would say to anyone on their leadership and life journey. Have patience. I think we are so worried that we're not getting where we should go in time, that we think we should get there quicker. But what happens when we try to get there quicker is we sometimes short circuit what we need to learn through the process. I like to say this: let the process make you so the destination doesn't break you. All right? Let the process make you so the destination, hitting my microphone, so the destination doesn't break you. Why? Because in the process, you are becoming someone who can handle what it is that you desire to become, to lead, to handle in life. And so be patient. Allow yourself room, laugh at yourself, laugh at the season you're in. Go, okay, we're going to get there. We're okay. We're on this journey. Take a deep breath and keep going. Sometimes we compare ourselves so much to others, or we measure ourselves by a certain level of success, and it's never healthy. So get that out of the picture. Take a deep breath, be patient, and realize, hey, you know what? I'm on the journey. I'm keeping on going. I haven't given up. Lawrence, we're still here. We're still here, and we're going to keep on being here, doing our very best, building what we believe is in our heart to build. So hopefully that helps you, Roseanne. Thank you for all the questions, and we'll continue to get to those. All right, so we've answered some questions. Now we're going to talk about something that I believe is really important, something we all have to deal with, that I've termed the arrival ideal. Now, this is where we're going to deal with complacency in life, because what happens is this idea that somehow, some stage in my life, I'm going to have arrived. Lawrence, that is the whole aim of life, that I get to a point where I've arrived. And what does that mean? Well, that means I can chill out on the beach somewhere, rubbing coconut oil all over my body, and how wonderful that would be with flies buzzing around and all the rest of it. No, I'm sure it's a wonderful idea for a vacation, but I don't necessarily think it is the ideal aim for success or for arrival. In fact, here's what I believe the truth to be. The moment you think you've arrived is the moment you lose your edge. Okay? The moment you think you've arrived is the moment you lose your edge. So we've got to be careful that we never get to a point. It doesn't matter how successful we are, if we want to use that term, or how much we achieve. If we ever feel like we've arrived, then that's the moment when we start to step back and we lose our edge. A number of years ago, I was actually interviewed about our church. My wife and I lead Hillsong South Africa. We've been on this journey for 9 years. We moved from Sydney to Cape Town in 2008 and established the church. And someone asked me, hey, church is going really good. Are you going to have a bit of a rest? Now, this actually happened when our church was 3 years old. We had just moved into our building, which is the building where we are doing our podcast here with the Podcats. That's who are on the podcast with me. I call them the Podcats. Lawrence is here. The others you cannot see are Damien, FJ, and my favorite human, Zanelle, because her last name is Human. Do you get it? She's my favorite human. So anyway, they're the Podcats. Now, that's where we're doing. We're in this building. We've got this building which was a reclaimed nightclub. This was previously the largest nightclub in South Africa. We've ended up buying it, turning it into church. This was, 3 years into the journey. We'd got into the nightclub building. We'd turned it into church. We'd launched one location in Somerset West. And I think, church was growing, people looking at our organization thinking, wow, you've just done a lot. Are you going to have a rest? And it would be tempting to dwell on the success. It would be tempting to dwell and just go, hey, we can relax now. We've put some hard work in. We've moved countries. But you know what? I'm glad we didn't. Lawrence, I'm glad we didn't stop there. Because here's the good news. We are 9 years into the journey now. That was 3 years into the journey. 9 years into the journey. We are just about to launch our 9th location. And that is happening in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, amongst those who eat lentil salads and drink green juice, the hippies who need Jesus. And it's going to be fantastic. But you know what I realized is that you could have looked by a number of different measurements and gone, hey, wow, you guys have achieved a lot. But I'm glad we didn't listen to those voices, but we kept on pushing forward. And there's still a whole lot more that we have yet to do. Why? We don't feel like we arrived. In fact, the vision that we have, we say, is we're building church to build a nation. So if we're going to build a nation, it's not about the size of the church. It's about the influence. Yeah, we want to grow in locations. Yes, we want to see more people coming in. But more than that, we want to influence the future of this nation in a positive way, in a way that uplifts the lives of people, in a way that we believe can build the economy, in a way that can build leaders who will influence in all different spheres of life, who will be leaders of integrity and character, whether that be in the political world, whether that be in the business world, the sporting world, media, arts, right across. And that's a big vision. And so that is keeping us busy. We haven't arrived, and I hope you feel the same way about whatever it is that you are doing. When we think we've arrived, you know what? It causes us to take it easy. It's kind of the goal. You know what the goal is? If you're American, isn't the goal to move to Florida? Live the dream. If you're in Europe, the dream is what? South of France, Spain, Greek Isles. I don't know. If you live in Australia, pensioners' paradise. That's right, up at Port Macquarie. And you may never have heard of it, but don't worry. It's a wonderful place if you're a senior citizen. If you're South African, Lawrence, where would you go?
Could be George. Or Hartenbos.
I've been to George once, and to the people of George, what a wonderful place it is. I was glad to leave. And also Hartenbos, where the dam is. Wow, you'd be living the dream there. Let me tell you, none of those places are where you want to have arrived. If you live in those places, I'm sure they're wonderful. Here's the thing, the danger of arriving is a sense of complacency. Okay. The Oxford Dictionary defines complacency as this: being uncritically satisfied with oneself or one's achievements. Wow. Uncritically satisfied with oneself or one's achievements. So I don't want criticism. I just want to be me. I want to do my thing. I've arrived and everything's fine. Now, there is nothing wrong with achieving, but let me tell you, there is always more that I believe God has for our lives, and it can look different in different seasons, but there is always something more. And if we uncritically live with a satisfaction, then we are never going to achieve more. And so we really have to be careful. Never let one achievement become your final destination. You may have achieved something, you may have built a company, you may have sold that company, but it doesn't mean you're finished with achieving in life. It just may look different. I love the idea that you can go from success to significance. Some people are trying to be successful rather than asking the question, am I really being significant and living a legacy or leaving a legacy for those around me? And I think that's really important. There is always something. I look at my dad, he's in his 70s, he's a hero of mine, he's retired from his legal profession, but he's still living life and he's still achieving in a whole lot of different areas, but life looks different. And I think it's the same for all of us. So how do we deal with this? How do we overcome complacency and keep moving forward? And maybe you're here right now listening, watching this, and you're like struggling with the what do I do next? You know, I've finished my degree, or life's tough, I'm not sure what to do next, or, you know, I just feel a little bit complacent, or life's kind of overwhelming. We're going to give you 3 things to help you. Okay, the first one, and none of these are complicated. Okay, I don't believe any of these are things that haven't been said before, but I'm going to say them to you because I know you need to hear them, and I need to hear them. I need to remind myself of them, and Lawrence needs to hear them, and the podcasts need to hear them. So here we go. The first thing, how do we combat complacency and deal with the arrival idea, is to get a bigger vision. Keep getting a bigger vision. This is what vision will do. Vision will humble you. Vision will stir you. Vision will get you moving in a certain direction. Without vision, you often, you know, the Bible says in Proverbs, you have no vision. People cast off restraint. There's nothing for people to live for without a vision for their life. And sadly, people live without vision, and people just go through the motions. And I want to encourage you, don't be that person. We'll probably do an entire podcast talking about vision in the future, but I am thankful that we have a church full of people that we're a part of who are excited to go on this vision story with us. That one location wasn't just acceptable for everybody, even though They may never get to experience what happens in another location. I think about the fact that we're here building church in South Africa was because our church in Sydney said, we've got a bigger vision for other parts of the world. We may never even be there, but we want to contribute to it. We want to be part of it. We've got a bigger vision. And whatever it looks like in your life, you need to keep having a bigger vision. When I feel like we've arrived, all I've got to do is go, what's the population of South Africa? Right now, what is it? It's 50 something million?
Yeah, 52.
Wow, 52 million people. The population of Africa is 1 billion.
Yeah.
In the next 20 or 30 years, Africa is going to double in population to 2 billion. South Africa is going to get close to doubling as well. And I'm thinking, wow, we've arrived, as if we have not arrived. There's still a whole lot of people who we believe have a significant opportunity to be part of a church family. And so, that's just us. But what about you? I mean, I remember when I was a youth pastor, and to get a bigger vision, you know what I'd do? I'd go to the shopping mall. I'd grab some of our team and I'd say, guys, let's go see our congregation. Because our congregation isn't everyone who turns up every Friday night or Wednesday night. Our congregation is all the youth in the city. And if we go to the shopping mall, we see young people everywhere and we're like, hey, man, we got to get a bigger vision. We got to work out a way to reach these. When it comes to your business, when it comes to your organization, are you allowing your measurement to be too low in what you're basing your success on? Well, we're doing pretty good. And yeah, we've grown a little bit. And maybe it's time for you to challenge yourself again to look at a different level. How do you do that? How do you grow that vision? How do you see differently? You get around big people. You get around visionary people, people who challenge you, people who make it uncomfortable. There are some people I'm around and it's uncomfortable, Lawrence. You're not one of them. I like you. You're most of the time comfortable. The beard's slightly uncomfortable. No, it's not. It's wonderful. I want to be around uncomfortable people because you know what? They challenge me to think bigger, to see bigger. Sometimes I remember going and having lunch with Craig Rochelle, who I admire and respect, who leads a phenomenal church, probably the largest church in America now, Life Church. Was able to have lunch with him. And I mean, their church is reaching thousands, 70,000+ people every Sunday. And I'm like, man, where am I at? I got to be challenged to go, how do we grow? Now, I'm just talking about church, but this can be any business, any organization can be challenged. It's not just about numbers, but it's about challenging yourself to a bigger vision. Maybe it's in regard to your family. I've talked recently to our church and said, maybe you've never had a family holiday. Have a vision for your family. This year, we're going to go on a family vacation because I'll tell you what that will do for your family. It will create memories. It will build a strength and relationships within your family. And maybe you've never thought of vision like that. Well, you need to see vision personally for your family and for your life. Maybe it's a vision to complete a university degree. Maybe it's a vision to own your first house. Maybe it's a vision to build a business. All of these things start by you looking at where you're at and saying, I need a bigger vision for my life, and challenging yourself towards that. Okay, so secondly, and just a question, can vision be too big or unrealistic? And this is a debate. I understand that people go, oh, well, how big's too big? And, that's just ridiculous to have a vision like this if you're just starting with nothing. Look, I don't ever want to tell someone their vision is too big. But what I would say is maybe you need realistic goals toward that vision. So we might have a vision that we want to reach South Africa and we want to build the nation, but what are the realistic goals? The realistic goals are we need to launch locations in order to reach and impact people. In order to do that, we need to be financially strong. We need to have the right leaders. So there are certain practical goals toward that big vision. So vision and goals always work together. Get a big vision, but then work backwards. And so what would it look like to achieve that? Or what would we need financially? What would that mean? And then work backwards and go, okay, what are some achievable goals toward that? If we're going to have a family holiday, what's the vision? Well, it may not be a first class round the world in a private jet trip to the Bahamas, but it might be a vision for a family holiday here, and this is our budget, and we can do this if we sacrifice and all the rest of it. So you've got to have a big vision, but then you've got to have goals to work towards that. And I'm excited about our family holiday coming up a little bit later in the year, but that's another story. Okay, number 2. Combat complacency by continuing to challenge yourself. All right, so point number 1, how do you deal with complacency? Get a bigger vision. Point number 2, challenge yourself. Are you being challenged? I have to challenge myself. This is what I've realized, Lawrence. The organization I lead is only going to grow as I'm prepared to grow. It's only going to grow as big as I'm prepared to grow. Whether our organization grows or not is really dependent on me. Whether what you're leading grows is dependent on you. I want to say to husbands, to fathers there, your marriage, your family is dependent on you. Don't blame your wife. Don't blame your boss. Don't blame the kids. Don't blame the dog. Although sometimes I do like to blame the dog. I have 2 dogs, Bruno and Oscar, and they get a lot of blame for a lot of things, and they deserve it. But I love them, and they still love me. Here's the thing. You need to take personal responsibility for growing and challenging yourself. Don't blame anyone else. Take extreme ownership, which is an awesome book that I would encourage anyone to read by Jocko Willink and his friend, whose name I can't remember, but it is a phenomenal book, Extreme Ownership. One of the books that really changed my life and impacted me around this whole idea of challenging myself and taking personal responsibility. So how do I do that? How do I challenge myself? Well, it's in the books I read. It's listening to podcasts. It's the people I associate with. It's pushing myself into environments that would be challenging. Do you know, when I was leading a youth organization in Sydney, Lawrence, we made contact with the police commissioner. In fact, the police who heads up the police for the state. He has a budget of billions of Australian dollars. He has thousands, probably hundreds of thousands who are who he oversees, who are employed. This guy is in a significant role, and somehow I pushed my way into his office. In fact, when we were going through the process to get in there, I was with another guy, and we were kind of dressed like this, and they said, "Oh, you guys must be undercover." And I was like, yes. I wanted to say yes, because I always wanted to be an undercover kind of detective or something. And they literally looked at us and said, "Oh, you guys undercover department?" And I'm like, well, no, actually. Well, yeah, we're deep undercover. But anyway, I spoke to the police commissioner. Here's what I asked him, and he reminded me of this because he was at our Hillsong conference just a few weeks ago in Sydney. He said, "I remember when you asked me for a train." I asked him for a train, and it was for a specific purpose. It wasn't just so I could have a train to hang out with my friends. We were doing a huge youth event with, I think, 14,000 young people, and we needed to transport them. And so I thought maybe the police commissioner could help us get a train. So we got to see him, and he says, "Yeah, I'll help you get a train." And he calls the guy who's in charge of trains and organizes trains for us. So what am I doing? I challenged myself to be in a room with him. I challenged myself to have a big vision, and it's amazing how when you challenge yourself, you find yourself in places that you never dreamed, and you get answers to things that you never dreamed. And we ended up with trains, and we ended up bringing thousands of young people and packing out an arena. It was incredible, but you've got to challenge yourself. So maybe it's in areas of what you're eating. Maybe it's in exercise. Maybe it's just in how you see things. Are you someone who's constantly negative about everything? And you hate hanging around positive people because positive people annoy you. And this podcast is annoying you because it's getting really positive. The reality is you actually need to hang around people who challenge you in different areas. Maybe it's people, if you're not good with your finances, they challenge you in that area. Maybe it's people who are better at marriage and loving their wife and looking after their kids than you are. You need to challenge yourself in these areas if you're going to grow and not get complacent and not make excuses and not think you've arrived. So there are a whole lot of areas where you can upskill yourself. Maybe there's a professional challenge. Maybe there's a course you need to do. Maybe there's some areas of time management or planning that you need to improve yourself, or you can do courses in these areas. We do a course on financial management, Financial Peace University, and it's brilliant. And, that is with our friends who do an incredible job. Dave Ramsey organization. I call him the Dave Ramsey. That's a bad word in America. If you're American, I apologize. The Dave Ramsey organization do a brilliant podcast. They do a brilliant podcast, Entree Leadership, but also they do some brilliant teaching on financial management, Financial Peace University. Okay, so you've got to challenge yourself. Lastly, how do we combat becoming complacent? The arrival ideal is this. We've got to continue to become self-aware. I've got to learn to manage myself. Self-awareness is self-knowledge. It's the ability to self-assess, to self-evaluate, so you can identify areas in your life in which you can grow or improve. We talked a lot about this in our first podcast and a little bit in the second one, which is only 9 minutes long, but who's counting? Hey, Damo, who put that one together, one of the podcasts. Anyway, we love Damo, and this podcast is a little bit longer than that. It's a proper podcast, but it's going to finish soon, so keep on listening. Stay with us. Here's the thing. Enemies of self-awareness are those things that cause you to blame others. Okay? An enemy of self-awareness is when I'm blaming other people for where I'm at right now. I become a victim. The ultimate enemy of self-awareness is the victim mentality. It's someone else's fault. It's my parents' fault. It's the economy's fault. It's the president's fault. It's my teacher's fault. You know, whoever's fault it is, there's always someone to blame. It's like Uncle Rico. Do you remember Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite? If only the coach had put me in the fourth quarter, you know, everything would be different. I'd be sitting here in a hot tub with my soulmate. Anyway, sorry, you need to go watch the movie Napoleon Dynamite. But he's blaming everyone for the life that he had. Yeah. And self-aware people are not going to blame anyone. And you know what? I've seen some amazing, living in South Africa, you see some people who've come from incredibly tragic circumstances. We've got some amazing people on our team who have every reason to blame, every reason to make excuses for having a life where they're angry or they're unforgiving or they're just expecting others to look after them. And some of these people are the most self-motivated, most unvictim-like people, most forgiving, most generous, most gracious people, and they have made a decision. And that's what it comes down to. If you're going to combat the arrival ideal, combat complacency, you have to make a choice that I'm going to be aware of what's going on in myself, and I'm not going to be a victim no matter what it has that's happened in my world. Self-awareness means being critical in the right sense, not overcritical, but critical of things that I can improve on, analytical of strengths and weaknesses, so that I can grow and improve. This means I measure things. In our organization, we measure certain things. We measure attendance, not just so it's about numbers, but because it helps us to see what's working and what's not working. We measure volunteers. Do we have enough volunteers? Who's volunteering where? We measure aspects. Why? Because it helps us to see, are we doing a good job? And I think often we don't like to measure the areas where we're failing, so we try and ignore it. Those are the areas you need to measure the most. All right? If you are struggling in certain areas, if you have high turnover in your organization, you need to ask why. Maybe you need to measure that. Maybe you need to set a goal and say, we're going to see a change in this aspect of our organization. We want to see people stay, people work hard, people commit, people grow with the organization. So, self-awareness is going to help keep me moving in the right direction. So 3 things. If I'm going to deal with this complacency, this idea that I've arrived, that I've got it all together, number 1, get a big vision. Keep growing a big vision. Keep being challenged by big vision, big thinking people. It's uncomfortable, but that's where you want to be. Number 2, challenge yourself. Read books, listen to podcasts, hang around challenging people. Get yourself in environments. Go to places that challenge you. I remember we would run our youth ministry years ago, and I'd been to Disneyland, and they call Disneyland the happiest place on earth. And we're like, we want to make our youth ministry better than Disneyland. Now, we did not have the money. We did not have the resources. We weren't even allowed, I think, to use Mickey. It's probably trademark, but we were committed to going, if they can do it, so can we. And I tell you, sometimes you think you got to have money. You don't have to have money. You have to have the right attitude and the right spirit. And it's incredible what you can do. So number 3 is be self-aware and deal with those things. Here's a final thought from a guy in the Bible named Caleb. Caleb arrived at the promised land. This was the promise that he'd heard for years, in fact, for 40 plus years of his life. At 85, he arrives and says, I'm ready for my mountain. I'm ready to fight for it. I'm ready to go for it. I'm ready to step into this new thing that's mine. I haven't arrived. It hasn't all happened for me. There is something new for me to possess. And I want to challenge you, just like Caleb, get a bigger vision and keep on challenging yourself, because as you grow, everyone around you is going to continue to grow and move forward. And that's what it's all about. You'll have so many great adventures. We're going to Kenya this year. How awesome is that? We're taking a whole team to Nairobi, Kenya, where we're going to do an event in a huge arena of thousands, and we're going to help people in some of what I'm told is some of the biggest slum regions in Africa. We're going to be doing all kinds of, we're going to challenge ourselves, stepping out of our comfort zone. I'm excited about that, Lawrence. So many amazing opportunities around us, and I want to encourage you here on Phil's World in Life and Leadership to go for it. Dream big. You've not arrived, neither have I, and we're going to keep getting better at all the things that we believe are placed in our heart, the dreams, the ideas, those things that are pushing us forward. We're going to get better at achieving those things. Thank you for being with us. I hope today has helped you. As NBA player J.J. Redick said, you've never arrived, you're always becoming. Let's continue to become even better people for those around us. God bless. Thanks for being with us on Phil's World.